Thanks, Florian. Well, we've got 4 speakers today, or 4 panelists today that I'd like to introduce. And so, would the 4 panelists please make your way up to the stage? And there's a microphone each for you if you grab one and take a seat. And I'll introduce you in turn. So we have, and please excuse me for using first names. I think all the panellists, and myself included, have been introduced with our full names, but being youth, we like to, and I think I am young, even though I have a grandson, I would like to use the first names as some informality. So Nick, who is, if you say hello, Nick, just to test your microphone.
Hello.
Excellent, we've got a working microphone. Is the son of our own member, David Egan. And I think we've got Chris here as well. Oh, there we go. I can see people around the room. Nick is the immediate past president of Rotary Adelaide City and is currently governance director on Rotary Australia executive team. One of our speakers who's unable to be here today due to COVID is Lenard, who is a Rotary actor heavily involved in South Australia, and particularly in cultural activities, and he set up a company or an organisation called Mosaic, which is a highly successful which runs a highly successful cultural night, and is an event managing and partnering intergenerational community organisation dedicated to peace, interculturalism and youth empowerment, something that's very close to the ideals of Rotary. And Lenard will be represented by Mike, use first names. And Mike has a huge history in youth. You can see by his white beard there that there is that huge history behind him. We have Katey. Katey is a member of the Rotary Adelaide Light and also charter member of Rotary Club Adelaide City. She currently serves on Rotary's Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Task Force. Katey also has a rich and deep involvement with Rotary in many aspects, particularly youth, as we'll hear today. And Katey currently works for the Department of Education and is a past Paul Harris Fellow. We have Daniel. And Daniel is a current member of Rotary Club of Adelaide and has been involved in delivering RILA in the past and has been to Rotary headquarters in Evanston. Whilst Daniel may have been fairly busy with children and a young life, he has great stories to tell about his involvement in Rotary during his younger years. He's married to Elizabeth Beltrame, who is the daughter of our member Janine Pearce. So would you please welcome our 4 panellists. Okay, so we also have people who have contributed to today who will be presenting via video. Now, on the program we had Simoda Silva, and Simoda is unable to contribute due to her very busy schedule. Simoda has been involved in RIPEN and looking at youth societies and youth to parliament, and was the youth governor in South Australia. So Simoda is extraordinarily busy and was unable to contribute to today's event. But we do have contributions from Ilvasi and Shavord, Ilvasi Siraji and Shavord Verborg, and you should be able to recognise their names. I'll start the session with an introduction by Ilvasi. So we have Ilvasi on a photograph on behind me, and I hope many of you who've met Ilvasi do remember him. He started
I acknowledge and pay my respect to Anangu, the traditional custodians of the Pidginjara and Nyakunjara land.
Okay. So Ilvasi started as a refugee from Rwanda, and he arrived and went to Australia and went to Theberton Secondary College and was involved in setting up the Rotary Club there. He is currently 36 and is married to Genevieve from PNG and has a 5-year-old son, Simba.
I acknowledge and pay my respect to Anangu, the traditional custodians of the Pidginjara and Nyakunjara lands. Their deep connection and profound relationship with country, Ongora, Stories of Jukurupa and traditions enrich our shared understanding of this place. These lands have been our home for 5 years, granting me a profound appreciation for the ever-evolving knowledge that the Anangu hold about this land, a knowledge as dynamic as the environment they have inhabited for over 50,000 years. Furthermore, I want to extend my respect and acknowledgement to the Ghana people upon whose land I am speaking. As we gather here today, let us remember the ongoing resilience and contributions of the First Nations and their vibrant cultures across this vast continent. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of Rotary's centenary events. Today's gathering, including the ones I have spoken at, aligns with the German philosopher Jürgen Habermas's theory of the public sphere, where citizens convene to discuss and debate public concerns through open discourse, dialogue, and consensus building. Rotary excels in fostering this environment by welcoming individuals from diverse backgrounds. I was born along the Rwanda-Congo border, an area once united by customs and beliefs. However, from 1884 to 1885, European colonial powers gathered in Berlin, arbitrarily dividing Africa with borders that disregarded ethnic, cultural, and historical realities. As a result, my mother's family became Rwandese and my father's Congolese due to these artificial lines. This seemingly simple act of drawing lines on an African map had far reaching consequences, some of which persist to this day. Up to a certain point, I had a normal childhood. I grew up in a household dominated by my father, who was single parenting 8 children. We were surrounded by extended family, though, with aunties and uncles and grandparents all living within a 500-meter radius. I had heaps of cousins, and my childhood was filled with laughter and an endearing sense of safety. However, this idyllic childhood would soon change. I grew up in an environment heavily shaped by a settler colonial system that exerted its power, its influence politically, economically, and socially. It frequently exploited divisions among people as a divide and conquer strategy. This mentality culminated in the devastating 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. During this time, unimaginable atrocities occurred. Years of systemic indoctrination resulting in the death of 1 million innocent people in just 100 days. When the genocide against the Tutsi began, it marked a period of turmoil for millions of families in the Central Africa region. To this day, a continuous cycle of relocation persists as families search for a better and a more peaceful place to call home. A portion of my family was compelled to flee Congo, eventually finding temporary refuge in a camp in northern Uganda before ultimately settling in Australia.
I think that's a preview of the next video. So that gives an introduction to Ilvasi. And if you're looking back at history, the youth have been involved in multiple experiences around the world, and often not to their advantage. And Rotary is there to help the youth achieve their potential. So we all become a vibrant and effective member of the community. And Reg, thank you so much for looking back at the historic contributions our Rotary has made to youth. And there were some things that you mentioned that I had no idea that this club has been involved with, and starting some programs that have blossomed and matured over the years. So let's have a look at something of a bit more recent history than what Reg has provided. So what I'd like you to do to start this recent history is to have a glass ready. And so take your glass in your hand, and we'll just listen from someone who's been affected by us here.
Good day, Rotary Club of Adelaide, President Cam, Rotarians and friends. With this video, I would like to extend my hearty congratulations on Rotary Adelaide's centenary. My name is Sjoerd Verborg. I am from Arnhem, the Netherlands, and spent 1 year with the Rotary Club of Adelaide 20 years ago in 2003 as a Rotary exchange student. I learned quickly that I may not have been the first Dutch explorer to visit Australia, but I may be the first to return on a video 20 years later. When I arrived in Adelaide, I was welcomed by my counsellor David Egan, his wife Chris, and their son Nick Egan. Nick was just 11 years old at the time and became like a young brother to me from the start. When arriving to their home, I asked if it was okay to put my suitcase in the room. David answered, "She'll be right." To which I responded, "Who is she?" This marked the start of one of the most impactful, delightful years of my life. In Adelaide, I went to Pulteney Grammar, where they taught me how to row and honored me with Vice House Captain. Besides the Egans, I lived with 5 host families, and each of them shared with me their home, their family, and loads of fun adventures. Since then, my studies and career have taken me to 8 different countries before settling down in Stockholm, Sweden 6 years ago. Today, I work as a leader at a technology company called Amazon Web Services, where I am responsible for the Nordic countries. I live in Stockholm together with my girlfriend Clara and my dog called Wilbur. While the physical time spent with the Rotary Club of Adelaide was just 1 year out of 100, the impact of your contributions still remain after 20 years. I will be thankful for that for the rest of my life. So as we say in Sweden, skål to 100 years and to 100 years to come.
So there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to support an exchange student, and the Egans and other families who've been involved need to be thanked for all the contributions they make to support the youth. And Florian knows your names. And if we do have an exchange student, I think we might be asking for some support from those who Florian knows will help. So we've got an example of a young man coming to Adelaide from Africa who's been supported by this club, and we'll hear more of Ilvasi's story. We've got a brief story of an exchange student from the Netherlands, but we've got our panel members here who at one stage were all young. And so what I want to ask each of them in turn, and feel free to answer. So I'll start with Nick at the end there, but it's the same question for everybody. And there's really 2 questions. How did you become involved in Rotary as a youth participant? And which program was most influential for you? So Nick.
Well, I guess I've kind of always been connected with Rotary because my dad, David Egan, has been, well, in this club for a long time, and before that he was in Regency Park and I think some other club before that. And yeah, so I've been, I guess, connected with the Rotary forever, and I guess my earliest memories are like going to like the magic show every year that this club put on at Theberton, and I remember after a couple of years realizing that it was the exact same show every year, and I knew what trick was coming up next. Yeah, which was but then I guess really I got more connected when Sjoerd, he just heard from, came along, and while he was staying in Adelaide, I came along to quite a few Rotary meetings, sort of as a part of the family, I guess you could say. I remember coming to like the old Bradman room here, And yeah, so I met quite a few of you guys and other members of this club as part of that. So it was really good. And with Sherwood, it was wonderful having him as.
So, Nick, would you say that the exchange program was possibly the most impactful for you, or was it the magic show?
No, not at all. No, I would say the most impactful was later on when I went and did Ryla, because when Mum and Dad went off to Vietnam on a holiday, I was sort of forced to come to Ryla, and it was a great week. And well, these three were there, and so was Ilvasi, and it was an amazing week. I met so many people, and sort of really gained a lot of more confidence, and they sort of they encouraged me to come along to the Adelaide City Rotary Club, and I've basically never left. So
Excellent.
it was, yeah.
Mike, from a Leonard's perspective, since you're here for Leonard.
Hi, I met Lenard 5.5 years or so ago now. He was a member of Adelaide Uni Rotaract, and he'd just run his first cultural night. And David actually was the DG at the time, and he asked me to just get involved with Lenard and I guess act as a mentor for Lenard. So I've known him for 5 years and sort of grown up with him as he's progressed. How did he become involved with Rotary? A long-time mentor, Michael Emery from the UNFPA, advised him that if he wanted to work with the UN one day, he had to join Rotary. So he approached Rotary Adelaide, wanting to become a member, and was then referred by Heidi to the Adelaide University Rotaract Club in January 2017, and it's been an incredible journey ever since. And the Rotary program that most was impactful for him, his time at Rotaract has afforded him opportunities to grow and develop immensely, being surrounded with mentors and thought leaders through the years, including Chris and David Egan, myself and Julie Johnson, has allowed him to discover his potential to help others and to make a difference in the community. And to them, I'm eternally grateful. Isaac Newton once said that I've seen further than others. It's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. The power of mentorship has had a profound impact on his life. It's allowed him to unlock passions, to develop leadership skills, to understand the true meaning of service above self, to practice leading from behind in a real world context with the guidance and wise counsel of Rotarians and Rotaractors alike, to go on to mentor others and much, much more.
Thanks, Mike. And Katey, from your perspective, how did you get involved and what's the most impactful?
I got involved for completely selfish reasons. I was studying a law degree and quickly realising that just having a law degree was not going to get me a job at the end of my law degree. And my friend Susan Clift, Daniel's sister, who I knew through playing softball many years ago, introduced me to Ryla, and it took a few years, but she managed to get me to go along to Ryla, and I thought, beauty, this will be something good I can put on my resume. And then 12 years later, I'm still here in Rotary doing many different things, and little did I know that one little thing that I thought I would be able to add to my resume was actually something that ended up filling out my whole resume pretty much, to the point where I had an interview just a couple of weeks ago and pretty much used Rotary-related examples of leadership throughout the entire interview process. So it's been incredibly beneficial to my career, but also to my personal life as well, in the sense that through Ryla, I met like-minded people who wanted to contribute to the community, and do things, work on projects that were, I guess, greater than ourselves. So some of the people that I met through Ryla, I would still consider some of my nearest and dearest friends to this day, like Ilvasi, for one. So beautiful people, and it's given me an amazing trajectory in my personal and professional life, and I'm incredibly grateful.
Thanks, Katey. And you, Daniel?
Yeah, sure. So my sister was, I guess, the introduction to Rotary was met with some very healthy skepticism, and being a
I was a 20-something young Australian male that was into sport and only had leadership experience in that context, thought it wasn't for me and it sounded a bit odd. So I was eventually convinced. I feel like I was psychologically manipulated into attending a RILA. My sister was a team leader at the time, and I ultimately what changed my mind to attend this was, well, even if it seems like it's not my scene, how many weeks of my life have I wasted? And I think if we reflect on that, there's probably quite a few, for better or worse. What if I take one meaningful thing out of that sticks? That would be a fruitful endeavour. And it turns out it was a very good endeavour. The cliche life-changing is thrown around quite loosely, but you hear it a lot in Rotary's youth programs for good reason. So that was my introduction to it, and since then I've been a team leader. Then started with the Rotary Club of Adelaide, was a director of youth services previously on the board, and previously was the Interact chair. So my part here is that when you talk about what's the most profound part, for me it has to be RILA by default. I couldn't distinguish whether it was more profound to be a team leader or attend RILA as an awardee. But nevertheless, we've heard of all these great youth programs. My view here is, as an educator and someone that's been involved with lots of these things through my position, is that we have multiple touch points from Rotary, starting at about Interact level. And these can be, as cliche as it is, life-changing. So we have to just make sure that those experiences with Rotary along that person's timeline are positive. Then chances are, even if they don't turn to Rotaract or Rotary straight away, they'll come back in due course, because mine has been extremely positive throughout.
Thanks, Daniel.
Just quickly, Daniel, didn't Susan bribe you to go to RILA with a new phone?
Yes. Again, I was not particularly self-aware young male that was into sport and thought that was what leadership was. It turns out it wasn't. It was far more than that. So.
And Sean, I've known these three people through my work with RILA over the years, and I am honoured to have done that with them. I have learned so much, and it has kept me so young. So there's chance for all of us other Rotarians. Get in there.
Yeah. So we also can hear from Ilvasi and his
Arriving
what got
in
him
Adelaide
in.
in 2007, it was tough to adapt. My cultural beliefs sometimes clashed with the dominant culture. Nonetheless, I felt like I had been given a blank canvas on which I could paint the life I wanted to create. One of the pivotal experiences that I etched onto that canvas was attending RILA. The Rotary Club of Kidman Park had sponsored me without ever having met me, and this gesture profoundly touched me. It changed my perspective on my new country because I realized that there were ordinary men and women willing to do extraordinary things. You, Rotarians. As a newly arrived teenager, RILA instilled in me a renewed sense of purpose and a drive to support others. The motto, service above self, became a guiding light for me. I returned to RILA as a mentor here in SA but also interstate. In 2010, with Rotary's financial support, I attended International RILA in Montreal, Canada. Whilst attending Theberton Senior College, and with great support from Rotarian teachers, I became the charter president of the Rotaract Club for Global Peace. RILA and Rotaract provided me with a platform where I encountered young changemakers from diverse backgrounds, forming enduring friendships. I am forever grateful for these youth programs as they allowed me to make a positive impact on some lives and, most importantly, introduced me to Rotarians, Rilarians, and Rotaractors upon whom I can rely. Through Rotary involvement, I have met individuals who offered friendship, guidance, and provided me with a network, all the necessary ingredients I needed as a young fellow to successfully navigate my new life in this country.
So that's quite beautiful listening to it. Now that is definitely a multiple introductions, previews of something that's coming up later. So we've heard about how all of our panel members have become involved in a Rotary Youth Program. And I want to ask, starting with Mike, looking at Lenard's case, what is Lenard doing now?
Okay, what is Leonard doing now? Leonard is involved as the Chief Executive Officer of an organisation that's not yet a year old called Mosaic Adelaide. We decided to translate the cultural night that you are familiar with, the Adelaide University Rotary Club ran up until 2022. We decided to translate that into an incorporated organisation because it gave us more freedom. But we have kept Adelaide University Rotary Club as the founding partner. So we are still very much tied in with Rotary and with Rotary. But Lenard is our CEO, and he's just run the first Mosaic Adelaide 2023 Intercultural Festival. Happened last Saturday night. And Florian, here's your chance. This video is a result of the Saturday.
It's absolutely brilliant to see the evolution of a Rotary program under the leadership of youth into something that could really invigorate a community and be beneficial for our South Australia and our local community. So thanks, Mike, and thanks to Lenard, who's unable to be with us here. But it's not only through these types of youth leadership changing the way our existing programs are delivered, it's also how those the skills learnt help the participants develop themselves and influence the community. So, Katey, what are you doing now, and what have you used from the youth programs you've attended or from the Rotary experience that really has helped you?
Sure. So I work for the Department for Education in their professional learning area. So I manage professional learning programs for teachers and school principals in the public sector, which I love. Prior to that, I worked for South Australia Police in their diversity, equity and inclusion branch, which I also loved that work as well. And I think that work in particular was inspired by my involvement with RILA and RIPEN, because that was my first opportunity to work with such a diverse range of people from various backgrounds and demographics, that it really sparked a passion in me for the value of diversity and including people with different perspectives in decision making and in community projects. So that work that I did with SAPOL was amazing, and my community connections that I gained through RILA and through Rotaract certainly helped me in that role. And likewise, the work that I did with the police helped in my experience with Rotary when I was able to give back to projects related to diversity, equity and inclusion, particularly in that DEI task force that I sat on for about 3 years. So in that regard, it's helped me a lot in a lot of ways. Some of the projects I've been involved with have been incredible. I've been very lucky to meet people from all kinds of community groups through my Rotary participation and bring that into my career work as well.
Thank you, Katey. And Daniel?
Sure. So currently I'm teaching entrepreneurship and business at Pulteney Grammar School. And I guess I'd contend, given my team leadership at RILA in particular, that the skill set that goes with being an effective team leader is a skill set that's very similar to being a great teacher. Do I have 2 minutes to elaborate as to why?
Go for it.
Yeah, sure. So I think to start, you have to understand what RILA is all about, because some of you would have attended it, but in my time it was 7 days intensive leadership program, and it's just quite quirky in particular how the world's changed since then. We're just connected to our screens constantly, and in fact I can see about 7 in front of me right now. And to disengage from that, to work on yourself for 7 days intensively and be around amongst of like-minded people, it's a pretty unique experience. That's why Life Changer gets thrown around. On top of that, you've never met most of these people before and you feel like family by the end of it because of how close proximity you're in. So with that, you get really good at assessing people quickly as a leader and then adjusting your style to them, which I would contend is what good teaching is adapting to the person in front of you. And hopefully you can talk to people so you can establish relationships and build rapport. Now, all you need to add to that, in my view, to be a good teacher is get on with staff and play the political games in schools, but also be skilled in knowing what you do, like knowing your content and teaching it. So you're halfway there just through the skill set I got from Rotary, and I'd contend that I'd actually be a pretty terrible teacher if I didn't attend RILA's programs and be a leader. But I'm a really good teacher because I attended RILA for many years.
Thanks, Daniel. And Nick, from your perspective?
Yeah, so, well, I guess I do a few things. I guess in work, I work at a place called the Virtual War Memorial because, well, I'm a massive history nerd, but I actually got connected to that through, I came to one of the meetings here and I was talking to Steve Larkins, who's a member of this club, and he sort of founded the Virtual War Memorial and it sort of invited me to come and talk to them, and so that is an example of how a connection with Rotary could lead to a job. So that was a great experience. But within Rotaract, I currently as the governance director, so that's primarily about sort of chasing up Rotaract clubs, making sure they're on my Rotary and all those kind of stuff. But also, I'm also the leader of the Rotaract regionalisation team, so working out how Rotaract fits into regionalisation. It's a big task, and well, the election for the regional council is coming up starting next week, so I'm sure it's on most people's minds. But yeah, it's a big task, and trying to figure out how like the structure of Rotaract Australia and Rotaract Oceania fits into all that. And I think the skills that I've gained through going to RILA, being in Rotaract for a decade, doing so many different board positions, basically everything except Treasury because I'm terrible with numbers and stuff. But gaining all that experience has really helped me to be more confident than I was when I first sort of started this journey back when I started RILA. So yeah, I really am glad that I started that journey. Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. Well, we've got one more person to hear from, and that's Ilvasi again. But when we do so, we're going to start looking to the future as well. And what I'd like everyone in the audience and on the panel to do is start putting your minds to the problem of the future. What are we going to do about the future of our youth programs? Let's hear from Ilvasi.
The APY Land is a very special place in our state. We first moved here in 2019, living at Frigon, then Mimili, and now we live in a place called Morbuja, where I am the principal. Morbuja is a staggering 1600 kilometers from Adelaide. This distance isn't just a number, it's an expedition through a land of extremes, endless horizons of arid plains, rugged mountains, and untouched wilderness. Living on APY lands, the modern world seems distant, and the ancient rhythms of the land and its people take center stage. We feel very privileged being here because we are immersed in a realm of remoteness and wonder that few have the opportunity to explore. Echoing the words of the African American philosopher Cornel West, I am here to bear witness, given the space I occupy and the time I spend with the Anangu. Bearing witness goes beyond passive observation. It signifies a deep commitment to understanding people's circumstances, amplifying their diverse stories, and standing by their side in the face of adversity. This principle holds true for Rotary's numerous philanthropic projects, both here and abroad, as eloquently enumerated by the Honorable Lenard in his Founders' Day luncheon address. Celebrating the richness of the APY lands, we must also recognize the hardships endured by the Anangu. During my time here, two pressing concerns have left a profound impact: the alarming rates of youth suicide and the stark deficiencies in the quality of education. While there are numerous critical issues to address, these two weigh heavily on my mind each day. In a land of abundant wealth and opportunity, the persistence of despair among indigenous youth, cast in the haunting shadow of suicide, raises troubling questions. According to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, a federal government body, young Indigenous Australians are 3 times more likely to die by suicide than their non Indigenous counterpart. These aren't just numbers, they are deeply personal. Every death or attempt often hits close to home, sometimes involving a student I had taught just the day before or that very morning. Shouldn't we confront the darkness that lingers and ask ourselves, what is missing from this equation of hope? As Rotarians, how can we create lasting hope without first addressing these challenges within our First Nations community or communities? Education is a powerful lever that countless people from marginalized groups have used to uplift themselves and their communities out of poverty. However, while education has the potential to bring about positive change, it must be quality education to truly make a difference. On the APY lands, the odds are stacked against Anangu children and young people from achieving success in school. The pursuit of quality education faces a formidable challenge: the chronic nationwide shortage of teachers, which exacerbates concerns regarding teacher quality. Despite, to, despite efforts to attract and retain qualified teachers in remote areas, high rates of turnover persist. In the 5 years I've been here, across our partnership alone, hundreds of colleagues have come and gone, some barely lasting 2 weeks on the job. Reflecting on my time here, I admit it is a challenging environment to work in, even for an experienced teacher. Even so, the high teacher turnover often discourages some students and their families from valuing education. If education continues to be seen as a lost cause, how can we bridge the chasm? to close the gaps and nurture a future where every Anangu child and young person's potential can flourish. Rotarians' unwavering support to me over the years was not predicated on the pigmentation of my skin. It is a moral consistency with which you support all young people. As pioneers once, you can continue a century from now. How can Rotary ensure tangible opportunities for young Indigenous individuals in our state, especially the ones living in rural and remote communities? As community leaders, I believe Rotary has a moral obligation to actively work to address these issues and reduce disparities. It is up to us to push for those changes we need to see reflected in our society so that no one is left behind. Let us work to bring the stories and experiences of the APY Land youth to the forefront of Rotary clubs, just as mine was as a young refugee from the Congo. I want to acknowledge Rotary and its youth programs that I have been involved in, RIPEN, RALA, and Rotaract, for facilitating a place where it was important to me to share my perspective respectfully and honestly, as I believe that diversity of thought and culture can lead to richer discussions and a more inclusive society. While there may be clashes at times, I also see opportunities for learning, understanding, and bridging the gaps between our cultures. In the words of John Kenny, the 2009-2010 RI president, our daily actions and our daily decisions determine the course of Rotary for us all. The future of Rotary is in your hands. The future of Rotary is in my hands. Cheers. Here is to this century ahead.
I feel it's terribly poignant listening to Ilvasi, a refugee to this country, make such observations. And I think everyone here hopefully can see that we have a great youth program, a series of programs that we've supported over the past 100 years. And we can see recent graduates and how they're making use of their learnings in those programs to bring success and community change, living up to the Rotary goals of peace and a positive community change. So, before we started that video, I asked everyone to put their mind to thinking about the future, and Ilvasi asked us to do the same. But I'll just take it to our panel members first. Katey, what do you think we should be doing in the future? Is there anything from the programs in the past in which you participated that you'd like to see change? Was it brilliant? Nothing needs to be changed and just keep going.
One of the, I think, cornerstones of the RILA and RIPEN programs are that they are designed by youth for youth. So the team leaders involved are all young people, and we, having been involved in that team leader capacity and a coordinator capacity, and having been through the program, we understood what was needed, what people wanted, and what we could do to get the best experience that we could possibly imagine for the new participants coming through that program year after year. So what that's taught me is that we need to continue to involve the people who are impacted by our decision-making processes in the decision-making process. So the challenges and the problems and the community concerns that we're trying to address as Rotarians need to be done, talked about and decisions made based in consultation and co-design, even better, with the people who are impacted by those outcomes of what we are trying to achieve as Rotarians. We've got a really important decision to make in the coming days, and I think that reflects really strongly on the message I'm trying to make, is that when people who are impacted by the decision making are consulted with on that process, we get better outcomes.
Thanks, Katey. Daniel.
Sure. So my thing's going to come back to education really, and in particular schools. They're bureaucratic places that are hard to get the foot in the door, but once you do, it can be it can be a really positive relationship. And just one example is when in my time, the Rotary Club of Theberton would come down and help with the wood chopping, and that doesn't have to be something huge that's difficult to organise. It's just a bunch of people coming down, because what I find with young people, seeing them day in, day out, is they're screaming out for some meaning and doing something interesting. So we've got a lot of comfort in our modern world, and there's not much struggle. So the people like to do these things to stretch themselves a little bit, but also just seek some meaningful work. My view there is it's really hard to connect. Even someone my age, at the tender age of 32, I struggle to stay up to date with Gen Z lingo and remain relevant, frankly, because as soon as one meme is created and I'm up to trend, it changes again. So we're not gonna win, I don't think, through. We got to realize this is the first generation where they were raised with a screen. Okay, so their world is online and digital, and this is a chance with service work to bring them down to a physical, non-cyberspace world, essentially. And I think schools are a great avenue for that. As I sort of alluded to, I think there's nothing that needs to change with a lot of our programs. They're brilliant, but what needs to change is how we reach people. It's really hard to market to that generation because even I don't understand them, and I'm the age between many people in this room and the gap between myself is it gets quite hard to remain relevant, I think. So in schools, there's a real drive towards wellbeing programs, pastoral care, all that. That's the general avenue I found in Interact. And if that's a positive touch point, I think you've often got someone for life at that point, because they may not come to Ryla or Ripen straight away, but they've had one touch point with Rotary that was positive, and they might be receptive to future experiences down the track. So the Rotary brand's really strong. The first thing is changing the perception of what Rotary even is, and mine was distorted, as I alluded to. And then from there, it's just making sure, and if you know those people, tap them on the shoulder, because what you've probably heard in all these cases is someone that knew somebody said, hey, I think you'd be a good participant for this. And the person begrudgingly went, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And it was a life-changing experience. I've seen Interact, as the Interact chair, I've helped start some clubs and seen that be a great introduction to Rotary, and then people go to Ripen or Youth Exchange and so on and so forth. So it started something where I'd probably predict half those people will be Rotarians for life at some point in their life. Life gets busy in a high inflation environment. Between 25 and 40, it's really hard to capture those people. That's the reality of the world we live in, the economy we live in, and so on and so forth. But positive connotations with the brand, I think, is the best way forward. I don't know any other way to do it because I can't write memes that connect with that generation.
Thanks, Daniel. And Nick, your thoughts?
Well, I think in some ways I like to echo what Katey said, in that it's important for Rotarians, Rotary International, Rotary, in all the forms, to really consult with young people when designing these programs. And for example, I've been in Rotaract for a decade now, and throughout my time I've seen so many times when Rotarians, they mean well, they sort of they don't take young people's thoughts into account properly when there've been occasions when they try to impose a policy or a decision on Rotaractors, and without properly consulting us, it just doesn't work. And you need to consult with the people that things affect. And there have been many occasions, even recently, various things. It's just, you need to consult with the people that affect. So I would urge that Rotarians, when designing these youth projects, really consult with youth and with the people involved in the projects. Yeah.
Thanks, Nick.
And also, another thing I like to say is that with the regionalisation, it's important that, for example, Rotaract has had Rotaract Australia for a bit over a decade now. It's a great model of regionalisation working, where we've had support from a national structure that supported all the Rotaract clubs all around the country. And in some ways, I see the regionalisation pilot trying to do the same thing for Rotary as a whole. And I hope that it really succeeds as we move through the pilot.
Thanks, Nick. Daniel?
Just one other quick thought was we need to use the momentum that these programs generate, because what you do is you create a spark, just like the idea that most of the energy in a plane is on takeoff and landing. Once you leave Ryla, you're already on cloud 9. You should capture that while there's momentum. And that's what really birthed Adelaide City Rotaract Club, I believe, was a bunch of people coming back from Ryla and seeking more in those 51 other weeks of the year that aren't Ryla. So all these things generate positive experiences. You need to capture that while the strike while the iron is hot, essentially.
Mike?
I can only reiterate what these three people have already said. And my interpretation of what it is Rotary has got to realise that people don't come to it anymore. We as Rotarians have to get out there and tell people what we are and what we can do. And Daniel said it with marketing, and somehow we've got to do it. I haven't got the answers. I've thought about a few things, but really we've got to stop looking in and start looking out. And the only other thing I'll say at this point is, if we don't get young people involved in Rotary, that's it.
Thanks, Mike. So on that note, I'm going to pass the questions over to you. We've got 2 or 3 minutes. Florian, we just need a microphone. May I steal your microphone? I'll grab another one.
Thanks very much to all the members of the panel. That was great. And can I just pick up on your last few points about the future of Rotary? Because, we're really struggling, with the ageing and declining numbers. 49% of the clubs in this zone have less than 20 members. And the future of Rotary's in your hands. We don't only have to listen to you, but we have to involve you in the process. So I'd be very interested to hear, and Nick, you alluded to some of it, Katey, you mentioned something, Daniel as well. What are your thoughts on the regionalisation project, and what other things you think Rotary should be doing to turn itself around, attract, and more importantly, retain? Because the issue is in Rotary is not so much attracting, it's retaining. We've attracted, in the last 10 years, 31,000 members. We had 10 years ago 43. Today we've got 33,000 members. We dropped 9 in numbers, but what about the 31 that came in? So the problem's not so much attraction, it's retention. And most of these people are young, and they come, 85% are gone within 5 years. What can we do to get you into Rotary, or get your colleagues into Rotary, and keep them there?
Can I ask you to keep the answers very short? We are very close to time. Nick?
I would just say that young people tend to move around a lot more than older people. Like, for example, in Rotary, we've had so many members who've moved interstate, and they come and go. It's what happens with young people. They get jobs and they move interstate. So one of the things that's happened quite, I think, a bit is try to connect with other, say, Rotary clubs in other cities, and if people move to those cities, they can join those clubs. But it's hard with young people because they do move around a bit. Yeah. And also with like the university clubs, once people graduate from university, they tend to move on as well. Yeah, so yeah.
They join Adelaide Peace, as I did.
I would just quickly say, reiterating what I was saying before, but listen to us, listen to young people, and trust us, trust our ideas, even if you see them as a big risk. Trust in us, in that we have good ideas, and we are intelligent, capable people, and we know what we want to do. And if we get to do those things, that's probably going to keep us around a bit longer and retain us, because we feel value in the club.
Last opportunity, Daniel, if you want to say something.
Very short. I just studied the demographics. As I said, I wouldn't worry too much between the ages of 25 and 45, but I would worry if they were losing significant amounts of people 45 and older. In my pattern, we're not holding pattern in Rotary just simply because I have 2 children, and as they grow up and I have more time, I will come back. In the meantime, I'm doing some stuff at the Hatchery Centre, and I'm contributing how I can, but yeah, I'd really want to study the demographics, and if you're losing people that have lots of time, I'd really want to question why. That's just the conversation Katey said about consulting. Why is this happening? Going from there.
Thanks, Daniel. Now, I apologise, we don't have any more time for questions. I apologise for my lack of strict control of the time and being a harsh master or abuser of the bell. But nevertheless, would you please thank our panel members? And I've got a small gift of thanks for each of them.
Yep. Thanks. So also from my side, thanks for the panel members. And one of the small kind of like details, you see these balls in front of you. If you don't know what they are there for, they're there to put money in. And I will not make Rajiv tell you what kind of money you can give in, but the more paper, the better. So in general, these go to our community and youth services projects. So I want to thank the panelists again for effectively making this work, and so that we can essentially raise all the money that we actually then can, like, hopefully in conjunction with you, spend and support young people. And I would like now to essentially just hand over to our presiding officer. Thank you.